Hey guys, let's talk about the critical assignment for CST 100. This is a introduction to a biblical book. It's a paper that you're going to write that's 6 to 10 pages long. I brought up here the rubric that you'll see in the week 8 when you submit the paper, and I want to use that to sort of discuss how you go about making the paper and submitting the paper. It can be a little bit frustrating at times, so I just want to make sure things are as clear as I can, but please don't hesitate to write me if you have an issue, a special question. You can see that you have to select a biblical book. So one of the 66 books of the Bible, you have to choose to write your paper about, okay? Now, one of the things that sometimes I feel like we forget is that next step, and it's to read the Bible, the book, in its entirety. So the first thing you do, you pick your book, and then you read the whole thing through. That should reflect in how you deal with the paper, and it kind of helps you to get started and kind of pick out those major issues that we'll look at. You need to research the historical background, literary structure, major themes, and place in the biblical storyline, and the theological message in that book. You should have 6 sources, non-internet related sources. This is what's a non-internet source. It's a book. Okay, so this is the Bible. It's a good source. This is a commentary that you'll see in our school library. You'll see at most libraries. And one of the things that great about living here in California is that libraries will actually send you things now. So if you're not already a card holder for a local library, if you go to your local library, they'll have books that go toward a specific book of the Bible oftentimes. But if they don't, they make it really easy to borrow those books, and they'll have them sent sometimes directly to you. And so our library system is pretty sweet here in California. You can also go to the school library in the middle of campus. If you've not seen it, it's a small building, but it's next to the theater, to Van Dyne. It's kind of close to the new business school and engineering building in that area right there. So it's not very big, but it's got a lot of these specific resources. So let's talk about the different sections you're supposed to cover in your paper. One of the things that is important is that the paper have a really clear flow of these major topics. And the reason for that is because of this rubric. Now you can see the rubric here. And these are the issues that you're going to cover, right? So the critical issues. So you thoroughly address all the relevant critical issues, including author, date, sources, and historical background. And if you do that, if you do it thoroughly, then you get the full point score, right? So that's exemplary. And then if you get accomplished, developing, and then just beginning, it means you get points, but if you don't adequately address it, you'll get points, but it's probably, I think at this one, it's probably like 10 points, something like that, instead of 30. So this is how the score will appear. You'll get a score for each one of these sections. Literary structure, this is an outline of the book and a paragraph at the very beginning. I don't know if you can see this on this screen, but this is actually a 3-part outline. So, and if you can see this here, this outline in the bottom right-hand corner there of what I'm holding up, that's within this is the NIV Study Bible. So most study Bibles will have something like that. This one, again, I know I'm looking at really tiny things, but this is within a commentary. Starts with an outline. The two levels means that it's 1 and A, usually. It's what we use. Traditionally nowadays, they may use 1 and 1 again. Something like that. It's only one step beyond the first step. So if there's maybe 6 chapters in a book of the Bible, maybe those 6 chapters, each one of those are that first segment of the outline. But then within the chapter, it might have 3 or 4 points that it makes. So that's the outline that you provide. And then that paragraph at the beginning explaining that. The place in the storyline, this relates more to the Vaughan Roberts book and where it is in the creation and fall and redemption story. One of the things that we're looking for here is, can you take what you're reading in this book and fit it within the whole biblical story, so that it's not just like if you do Ruth or Esther. A lot of people like to use those books because they're interesting stories. How does that fit? What is that storyline? How does that fit into the biblical narrative? And maybe it's the faithfulness of Ruth. Maybe it's Esther's willingness to stand up and be put her life on the line, actually. And you can kind of demonstrate in a really clear way how that could fit within the overall story of God choosing people for redemption, that kind of idea. But it's something you can see a lot in Von Robert's book, and you'll also see it explained in many of the commentaries and things that you use. Then the theological themes, usually there's multiple themes of books. Sometimes there'll be a major theme and then multiple sub-themes, and you just need to break that down. You need to have at least 3 of those. One of the things that I recommend is using a commentary for that, because that's what they're there for. These commentaries really go at the major themes, and they often are organized around that line. If you look at this one, this is open to the book of John, and so the headlines are the theological emphasis, the theological sources, the remembered Jesus, relevant scriptures, and the risen Lord, and then theological emphases, revelation, God, Christology, salvation, and the church. And so you can kind of, if you use one of these, it's not that complicated. I also suggest that you read through the whole commentary on that book of the Bible. Okay, so you're really going to increase. You can actually even use that as you read along, and it moves a lot faster. But there's a lot of these available nowadays. Then we look at the personal reflection. That's a section of the book that is really, what did you learn from reading the story, right? So 3 different things. This is not one paragraph, is the only thing I would say. And having graded a lot of these, they tend to become one paragraph. But I think it needs to have more to it than that. The structure and length, all the sections, 6 to 10 pages. That's pretty simple to look at. There's 20 points for that. 20 points for reflection. Grammar and spellings, again, 20 points. And that's generally with the grammar and spelling, it's the repetitive errors. It's not capitalizing God. It's not capitalizing Jesus' name, or some things like that kind of people tend to get in habits of doing, and you kind of have to watch that. And then use of sources. So your sources, there are, in addition to the Bible, 6 scholarly non-internet sources. And it's not that all the sources have to be too large. I set aside at a different desk another introduction to this one of the books of the New Testament, and it's about 60 pages. I mean, they can be that thin and that available for you. I want to talk about one of the harder sections, and to me, at least, as you get to the end, and that's how to submit it. You submit it to really 3 places, but it says 2, but there's 3 things you have to do. One is you have to start with a critical assignment for originality. So you have to put it in SafeAssign first. SafeAssign is what we use to check for plagiarism, so people just don't copy and paste, big swaths of material, which is easier to do nowadays. And then you have TaskStream and Blackboard. And so within TaskStream, it's a completely unique thing. You'll see that, like it says, submit critical assignment here at the bottom. That will guide you through that whole TaskStream process. You see that's their logo right there. One of the things that we want to do is help make sure everybody gets graded the same. And then the purpose of TaskStream is to help us keep things consistent. And so we all use this rubric, right? And so everybody's getting checked the same way. Evaluations are very similar, and that's to help everyone. And so TaskStream is a tool that helps us do that. It says make sure you use Firefox or Google Chrome. I would suggest you definitely use Google Chrome. I've seen TaskStream completely break down, but usually it's only in the middle of the night. And then we're all kind of flummoxed on how to get out of the weekend. So it can be challenging. Don't wait till the last second with TaskStream. Just kind of get ahead of it. Hopefully it's getting better and better. So you submit the assignment, the critical assignment for originality here in Blackboard. That's at the last thing in the SafeAssign. This is a step-by-step guide for it. It's because it can be a little bit, if you have more than one class especially, it can be a little bit odd, and then you can have other papers out there. I've had students submit, for the wrong class occasionally. And we've only been doing this a couple of years. I've only been using TaskStream a couple of years. So it is something that we're all learning and need to kind of help each other with. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. The other thing I would do is I would try to tie this into what we're working on each week. Now, from here on out, you'll see each book of the Bible has sort of a basic outline in the PowerPoints that are provided. And your quizzes will kind of cover basic biblical material. There's not a lot of theoretical or theological material. It's more, this book says this book says this, and so you need to familiarize yourself with all the books of the Bible. If you need a reference to a specific book, perhaps you're looking for which book to go for, or which book maybe you think maybe you're trying to decide between a couple, please don't hesitate to call me or to write me. I'd be happy to talk to you about those books. Also, I would encourage you to look, I don't say off the beaten path, but don't necessarily just assume that everybody's going to do Genesis or whatever. Some of those books that are often chosen, like Genesis, are a lot more complicated. So try to find stories and parts of the Bible that inspire you, and use that as your motivation. All right, that's all I got for this week. Hope you have a great week. I'm praying for you this week, and we're excited about how well you've done so far. You guys are really nailing it. Thanks.